Welcome to the Caravan Show, where we discuss all things caravans. That's right, everything you need to know about caravans, from weight, towing, maintenance, appliances, renovations, buying a caravan, repairs, destinations and reviews. We'll also chat with some Aussie legends, manufacturers, suppliers and of course, people who love caravans. Take it away, Roy.
Roy here from the Caravan Show and podcast, and I have with me this morning Mayor Darriea Turley from the Broken Hill Council. Hey Darriea, how you going?
Hey Roy, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Bit of a rough start to this morning, but we won't have that conversation. Darriea, how long have you been the mayor at Broken Hill?
Well, I've been the mayor for 4 years, and it was an honour, an absolute honour to be the mayor. But I've been on council as an elected member for a long time, so it took a while to step up into that leadership role. But my first term at council, I actually put my hand up and said, I want to go on the tourism committee. And I want to see what we can do to, tell the world how great Broken Hill is.
Sounds like a great start, particularly for us today, because it means not only am I speaking to the mayor, I'm speaking to the person that knows the most about the tourism side of Broken Hill. Now, I think everyone's heard of Broken Hill, but can you tell us exactly where it is?
Broken Hill, it's interesting. It's actually very unique for travellers, but ideal for caravanners. So we're between the South Australian border. We're about 50 kilometres from the South Australian border, and we're in the middle between the Queensland and Victoria border. So right in the heart of, Australia, I like to think. Don't tell Alice Springs that. But we're that connection line to Adelaide, to Sydney, to Melbourne and to Queensland and everything above. And so an ideal place where everyone likes to pass through and spend a bit of time at.
Now, this isn't designed to be a topical type of conversation. So we're not really trying to point in time, but actually, as it turns out, this morning we heard that they've closed the border, but for the first time in 100 years since the Spanish flu, actually, we've closed the border between Victoria and New South Wales. Does that affect you where you are at Broken Hill?
Look, we knew that they were going. We knew yesterday. We heard the announcement on Monday that they were going to close the borders for Victorian travellers to come into New South Wales, and we understand that. So we don't think so. We think, if anything, a lot of people that would traditionally travel, to South Australia and going on to Sydney or Victoria would go through Mildura, and now they'll actually come through Broken Hill. So we think, if anything, because we're seeing a boom at the moment with tourists travelling, that if anything will actually capture all that market. And I have to say, I actually rung around and spoke to some of our caravan site owners, and they said they've all been assessed for their COVID-19, making sure they've got their plan in place. So we're ready for anyone to visit, and we know that our community is absolutely, understands that, people are travelling at difficult times, but, people are still travelling. And I was interested, Roy, I did, on the weekend I read this amazing article that there are 76,000 grey nomads on the road at any one time that don't have a house to go to. So the challenge of people being told go home isn't an option for them. So, if they want to come to Broken Hill, come on out.
That's really interesting about the transit customers, tourists, sorry. What I really love about this conversation already so far is you're clearly a half full type of girl. You're not a half empty type of girl at all, which is very good for Broken Hill. I'm really pleased that they've put someone like you in that role. So just going back a little bit to your history individually. So are you a local girl? Did you originally grow up in Broken Hill?
Yeah, I did. My parents, my dad and mum are from the area. My dad, I think, was born in Broken Hill, and my mum. My dad's family were from the pastoralist side. They had property down at Pooncarie, and he settled in Broken Hill and worked in the mines. My mum's dad was a Muslim cameleer, and so he had a camel train when he came to Australia from Bourke to Broken Hill to Port Augusta up to Alice Springs.
Wow.
And so, and there are great photos of the last camel ride of him coming into town with all his children on all his camels. And it's really fascinating because he had his family later in life. And then my parents had me later in life. And so it's kind of that I have this unique sort of history from the 1800s that were actually my grandparents. And he married my grandmother. He met and married her in Burke. And she was a Scottish Catholic descent. So I think sometimes I get my toughness from her. So,
good on you.
Because all I can remember my grandfather is lots of hugs and lots of fruit.
So as a local, and certainly local that's been there through generations, do you have a family business or are you in business there?
No, I'm not. I'm probably the first mayor. Well, I say this because I'm the first woman mayor in Broken Hill. And traditionally the mayors have come from business and they've had a beard. So
and a beard. Okay.
Yeah, and some kind of facial hair, So no, I don't. I work in health and I'm a senior manager and work for the whole area. So I've covered areas in my time from Lightning Ridge down to Balranald, from Oberon to Broken Hill. And so I'm always looking at developing programs in those areas. So I know what it's like to travel in the Far West. I know some of the challenges and I know the best parts to go as well.
Yeah, we're going to talk a bit about those best parts. Of course, Broken Hill is famous also as being Australia's version of Hollywood, isn't it?
It is. There are so many Hollywood movies made here in Broken Hill. Lots of commercials all the time. TV shows at the moment. I think I think they're already starting to look at the production, but the RFDS show, the Royal Flying Doctors, they had a show back in the 80s and 90s, and they're going to refilm a modern version of that. But at any stage when you're travelling in Broken Hill, I always think I'm in a Hollywood movie set as I drive along, and I'm driving along and you see actors walking past in the street it's just surreal. And I think last year we had Bill Nighy from Love Actually was in town, absolutely delightful man who was just, part of our local culture. He was, you'd see him sitting at the coffee shop reading or walking, around, and it's always great. Usually, the whoever's filming, the crew, everybody's terrific and you feel part of it. Often there's a job out here if you need one. So
actually, interesting. You mentioned Bill because I met him at the airport and we sat and had a bit of a chat actually around about the same time. So he was probably on his way to Broken Hill for that.
He is, and he was such a surprise because he was a very quiet, thoughtful person.
Unassuming, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just delightful to see those off-camera sort of characters, and yeah, so it's always great, and you never know who. I can remember being out for dinner one night, and my son met a famous actor, and he said to this guy, I still laugh. He said, "Do you want to meet my mum?" And the actor looked at him. I won't name him, and looked at him like, "What are you trying to line me up?" And then he said, "She's the mayor." And he said, "Oh yes, let me meet the mayor." And it was honest. We still laugh about it because my son says it was like I just said, "I want to meet my mum, not line you up." And it's like, no, she's the mayor. And he said, "Oh yes, of course."
I'm just reading here about some of the films actually, and we've got Waking Fright, Mad Max 2, The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, The Last Cab to Darwin, Strangerland, and Mission Impossible 2. And then some of the places it's saying here were actually set in the town itself, places like at the Palace Hotel. And that just sounds, absolutely incredible. So one of the things our visitors to Broken Hill could possibly look forward to, you just never know who you're going to bump into at the local hotel having a beer with you, which is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not a local character, and there are many, that it is. You just don't know who you're talking to. And even for the locals, we get such a kick out of talking to tourists and finding out what their journey is and where they're travelling and what they're thinking of. And so it's just great for us. I actually stayed out at Silverton about 3 weekends ago. I thought, Silverton is it's only probably a 25-minute drive from Broken Hill, if that. And it's a little ghost town. It's amazing. And, there's a fire in the pub. And so my husband and I thought, well, we can't go too far with COVID and with my role as mayor at the moment. So we said, let's have a night at Silverton, which most locals would laugh about. But we met these incredible people that were travelling. There is a campsite out there. It was just fantastic, and hearing their adventures. So it works both ways. Travellers get to meet, they never know if they're meeting a movie star or, but also the locals just love to hear their tales as well.
So just talking about Broken Hill in general now, it covers about what sort of size area?
It's the Broken Hill itself is just the boundaries of the town, just probably outside the boundaries, about a kilometre out. So Broken Hill traditionally it's the land of the Willakali people and of the Barkindji Nation, and it was discovered and it was a mining town. So I think it's the longest mined town in the world. And if I say that, I hope I got it right. And that, because we're still in production and we've still got mines opening up around our site. But the city itself is just Broken Hill City. And we're really looking, because we're in a growth spurt at the moment, so we're talking to Crown Land about expanding out and grabbing more land. But one of the things that's unique is that we really are an environmental town in a lot of ways, and people sort of think they're going to go and see this mining town. But because we're out in the desert, we've really had to invest in how we stop the big dust storms coming in. So there's been lots of innovation that started in Broken Hill to maintain topsoil. And one of them that surrounds our town is a regeneration area. And it's amazing in spring because there's lots of wildflowers out there for people to discover. But it is that thing that, we are unique because we're isolated, but also because innovation stands by us as well.
So the actual landmass for Broken Hill itself is relatively small, but in overall size for the council area of Broken Hill, so that the region of Broken Hill is about 170 square kilometres or something. Is that right?
Yeah, that's probably about right. It's not that big at all compared to some towns, and they're much bigger than others if you think about some of those smaller inner city shires and councils.
And you've got a fairly decent population of around about 17,000 or something. Is that right?
Yeah, Roy, it used to be, in its heyday, it was around 36,000. And that's when mining production was, it wasn't it was all manpower then and women power. And now, with that, things have changed. So we've been hit with the sea change, and now people are actually looking at coming back to Broken Hill. Our housing stock, we don't have a lot of vacant houses or houses on the market because people understand that it's an easy place to live. So lots of people are returning home or looking at it as a site where they'd actually like to base themselves. And we had someone actually recently said to me, we've been looking for a job in Broken Hill. We're caravanners, and we actually have moved here working, and then we take off and have all our adventures. And I thought I hadn't even heard of that or thought of that. But this was a couple that were in that stage where they could travel, and Broken Hill was kind of that place they could go to South Australia, Queensland, Victoria, anywhere they liked.
So is that something that caravanners can do in Broken Hill? If they pull up there and they're looking for some extra spending money, can they actually find work to do?
Well, we have, pre-COVID-19, we have a low unemployment rate. So, I think that, there's always opportunities. I think it was around 3%. But, it's just a case of what's happening at that stage. So I could never guarantee a job, but it looks, if anybody searches, you can see lots of employment around, and you find that, that you never know what the opportunities are.
So you mentioned before First Peoples and the fact that you had some tribes from your area. Can can you tell me, do you still have an Indigenous population there?
We do. Our population's around, at any stage, 8 to 10%. And it is, traditionally it is the Willakali people, but there are other mobs that are here and live, work and play in Broken Hill, so which is great for us.
Are they contributing to your local culture? I mean, are we getting paintings and are they doing arts and craft type things? Can you visit these things?
Well, there is actually there is a fellow who started up an Aboriginal art gallery, and that's easy to access. But our local galleries often sell the Aboriginal art, and also the towns outside of Broken Hill, out at Menindee, there is their tourist centre there, has a lot of artwork as well. And so there's so many great artists here that, you're just in awe. Very soon, I think July, we have our Outback Art Prize. And if any visitors are in town for that, and we're all open, post-COVID, things change, come along to the opening, because it is the art gallery opening is always the best time to see not just local art, because the Outback Art Prize is a national art prize, but, you get an opportunity to meet lots of local artists all in one spot as well. And I reckon it's one of the highlights of Broken Hill is that night, because you never know what piece will win and how the crowd will react.
So just tell me a little bit about what's available for caravanners. Do we have caravan parks and free parks available?
We have caravan parks. You have, I think there's 4 sites. So there is 2 caravan parks, and then 2, now what do you call them? I would say low maintenance. So there's 2 parks in Broken Hill, but the Broken Hill Racecourse and the Starview campsite is in the Living Desert. And then you've got the Penrose Park in Silverton. And then up at Menindee, you have the Menindee Lakes Caravan Park, and I think the Menindee Caravan Park and Kopi Hollow Caravan Park. But if you're looking at free camping sites, they're mainly up at Menindee Lakes at Palmaroo, and they have free sites up there.
So when our caravanners get there, we know now that there's an Aboriginal element there and they can buy art and that sort of stuff. But what other attractions or activities are there in Broken Hill for people?
Well, one of the first things I always do is I take people out. We have these incredible sculptures it's an international sculpture symposium, and it's in a place called the Living Desert. And so you can go out there and go out to the sculptures. Now, take some chairs with you. You can take a bottle of wine or some hot coffees and nibbles. I often take a cheese platter, and it's fantastic for watching the sunset. It is just beautiful. Don't pack up soon as the sun sets. Wait and watch the colours of the clouds. And that is one of my favourite things to do. And a lot of people get up and watch the sunrise, but there's actually a walk site out there. So you can get up in the morning and go out there and go for a walk out in the Living Desert, see all the kangaroos and the emus and walk in this site. There's a flora and fauna that takes you. It's a little easy walk that takes you in that area. And the other part for me is, because sunrise, sunsets are my thing, is Mundi Plains out at Silverton. You could go out there at any stage and spend, I still go. I went out there last weekend 3 weekends ago and sat out there for a while and was just in awe of the landscape. There are lots of things to do. We've got the Royal Flying Doctor Service, and people from the city don't understand that a lot of our health and emergency services are delivered with the Royal Flying Doctor Services. So if you have an accident on the road, the chances are it'll be the flying doctors that come in and look after you. So going out to their base and seeing their history is another great highlight for anyone to see. But it could be that you might want to see, because while you're out here, it's black nights, where you can see a million stars. So we actually have, apart from, when I'm particularly if I'm up at Menindee, I'll go and sit outside. I've got an old caravan up there and a permanent site, and we'll sit outside and just watch the stars. But if you want to have a bit of history on what's happening out there in the universe, that one of our biggest tourist attraction is outback astronomy. And of a night, you can book a tour and look at the stars and be taken through the journey of what's in our southern cluster at the moment. But there's so much to do during the day as well. Whether you've heard about some of our famous artists and you want to go and visit their galleries, our art gallery is one of the oldest regional galleries in Australia. And so you might want to go there and see our collection and what we're actually displaying at the moment. But you might just want to go up to the Palace Hotel, have a beer on the balcony, or, hold out to September, not this year, but next year, when one of the biggest festivals in Australia is held in the outback towns called the Broken Hill Festival. Now, I have to say, Roy, that I never thought I'd be a mayor that would, that my biggest tourist attraction is a drag queen festival.
Well, Priscilla, Heart of the Desert, I mean, there had to be some connection there somewhere, surely.
Absolutely. So the palace is where a lot of the filming was done for Priscilla Queen of the Desert. Esther Laravia has set up this festival, and it's just amazing. Our town is booked out, book in early for next year. It's become an international thing. We have people travelling from overseas. It is fantastic, and we love it. I go and put my emerald chains and welcome the train as the train comes in. People just have a ball and they're happy. And it's like rainbow colours everywhere. So, I laugh. It's like from dust storms to drag queens. Broken Hill has it all.
Sounds like fantastic fun. I've got to ask this question because when you first said living desert, I sort of had this vision of this red earth constantly moving or something. So why was it called the living desert?
I think because it's so alive. You go out there and there's incredible local, flora and fauna. It is part of that. We wanted to look after the area. So we've done lots of replanting, but we want people to experience the outback that probably don't want to go and live out, camp out into a remote site, but want to have the elements. So it's just that part. And I love to go and do the walks out there. So there's a walk that you do. It takes me 45 minutes because I'm probably not the fittest of persons, but and I take my first year English teacher with me just to make me look better, but she still, steps out in front of me. So we go out there and it's just beautiful. The eagles will fly in front of you. You'll see, the desert bird life, but you'll also get to see what the arid landscape really is like. And there's a point there that you sit on the hill and you're overlooking the land, and you think, my goodness, aren't we lucky to be here?
Again, it sounds fantastic. Do we have other things such as water? Is there fishing or boating or anything like that available?
Well, it's only an hour away. Now, Broken Hill, doesn't have a river near it, but the Darling River flows into Menindee Lakes, and at the moment, Lake Palmeroo, Kopi Hollow, Wetherill are full. And I went up there this week. Look, I could be a travel guide, couldn't I?
You could.
I went up there my last weekend and spent the weekend up there, and it was just magnificent. I took a photo and put it on my Facebook page, and I think family was saying, where are you? Are you in Palm Cove? Are you here? And no, I'm at Palmeroo. And there were caravanners, because that's a free camping site. And there were caravanners everywhere camped out. And I said to family, it looks like Easter on steroids up here. So, but it is, we're always out for a chat. And it was just amazing just to sit back and watch the water. And people were out fishing. People were out yabbying. I was going to go back the next day to see if they got any yabbies and bribe my way in for a feed. But I thought it was a bit cold, but clearly they, were getting something. But people are out there on the river, and when you're up at places like, if you're based in Broken Hill and you go up to Menindee, or up to Tibooburra, there are great national parks around. And that question about, the Aboriginal community, you go up to Mudawinji, you go out to any of these areas and, you realise that we are on ancient lands, and, the wisdom that the Aboriginal community have left us is just amazing.
So is there still available in your area somewhere where people can go to do fossicking, to do a bit of gold prospecting?
I think I'm not sure what the rules are, but Tibooburra, I think people still go up to Tibooburra because that's where gold was. Um, White Cliffs is opal mining, and I'm not sure, as I said, if there's, what the rules are around fossicking, but, opals are up at White Cliffs and gold is up at Tibooburra. But you know what I see people doing is they look for bottles. And I heard the most amazing stories because people were telling me that where the Cobb and Co coach, or, where people would travel, they check out the sites around there where people may have stopped and had a particular rest, and they find incredible bottles. And one person found a bottle that was worth $5,000.
Wow.
I know, and I just think about the times when my dad, when my dad was when I was young, and my dad had a bit of a bottle collection and a mineral collection, and someone should have kept that instead of taking it to the dump. So they didn't understand the value in bottles, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, clearly it was a different world for dumping and trashing, wasn't it, back in those days? Because if you did throw your bits and pieces away, you're throwing in a bottle that could have been worth $5,000 years later, where nowadays they're throwing plastic, which is doing nothing for the environment at all and not making anyone any money. Although I'm told there are places you can get 5 cents for those bottles nowadays, but those plastic bottles, but that's probably not what they should be going to Broken Hill for, isn't it?
No, but the bottles, I think there's a special Facebook page that'll tell you about the bottles and where to find them and how to look. And, I'm sure there's regulations around it. And, there was a group that came out last year that went fossicking. And so if you want gold, go to Tibooburra. White Cliffs is the opal mining, and bottles everywhere in between.
Now, who would have ever guessed that you go to Broken Hill to find bottles? I mean, it just hadn't occurred to me that was a possibility, and that's very unique.
It is. And someone gave me 2 bottles last year, a friend of mine, and he told me the story, which I won't repeat on air where he found them, but I was just in awe, and I was very careful how I cleaned them. So, but I keep saying to him, I need a third because you should never have 2. And he laughs because he said, yeah, you get a third and you'll want a fourth. So, but that's one of the things, you just never know what the treasures are out here. And I just wanted, Roy, to say to you that, how you talked about the Hollywood of the outback and Broken Hill, and, that Mad Max 2 was filmed here. And the last Mad Max film was supposed to be filmed here, but we had some rain, so they moved to another country. But we're having a big reunion in 2021, I think, because it's 40 years since Mad Max was filmed here. And people are already looking at coming out to see this. And I can remember taking my son to the Adventures for 2020, and he was only a young boy then, and we went to the film night, and there were people from everywhere in the world, mainly lots of people from Japan, because Mad Max is big in Japan. All the cars were on display, streets were closed. It was just amazing. So, it's going to be a fantastic time for people to come out. So every Easter, there's usually some crazy event going on that's amazing. But it's also the time that we have our Heritage Festival with lots of free things for people to go to, because when you're travelling, you can't afford to pay to go into everything. So there's always lots of free events that people want to go to. So we always have that on our website about our Heritage Festival.
What makes up your local economy, Darriea? Do you have, market gardens or wineries, beer places? Do you make gin? What exactly, apart from the obvious, what else do you do there at Broken Hill?
Well, it's interesting that you say about make gin. There's a new brewery just about to open up here. And I'm really fascinated that we're getting a brewery. I mean, and just want to say to every distillery out there that made sanitizer during the COVID, thank you. But I also appreciate a nice gin. So, so we're having a distillery opening up here. So it's kind of what makes up our economy is there's some incredible food places to go to. In the old days when I was a young kid, it was the big thrill was to go to a cafe, probably at Christmas where you got taken out. But these days, people love that outdoor experience. They love to sit outside. They love to relax and, I love going out for breakfast. That's my thing. I'd rather a good breakfast than a dinner. So we have that sort of lifestyle. And, there's always, as I said, there's the festivals that happen, but it is the tourism events that people really go to. So we have racing events that people love to experience. And I am lucky that I am the patron saint of 2 race events that happen in Broken Hill. But, for everything else that is around us, I think for most people it is, what drives us, what's our economy. I always say that what drives us is how friendly our people are. It doesn't matter what business is around, that our people are really friendly. And a lot of people have been a bit worried and scared over the COVID, but, they've put everything in place that we can all be safe. And it's time for people that, with such low rates that people are starting to move. So, the friendliness of the people, I think people are surprised when they come to Broken Hill and they walk down the street and people say hello to them, how you going? And, it's just amazing that people will sort of look and think, are they talking to me? And go, and then, they'll stop and say hello back and have a big chat and they'll find out what's going on in town today. And that's what I say to visitors, just ask a local and they'll help you out. Whatever happens, that's what we're here for.
Yes, it's lovely to see the friendliness of locals in regional Australia. Just talking about your location again, and I know we sort of covered this one slightly before, but roughly how far out of Adelaide and how far out of Melbourne would you be?
So I think from Adelaide, we're about 550 k's. So for people that are travelling from Adelaide, they might want to go to the Clare Valley to the Barossa, through the Barossa area, and then come through to Broken Hill. And then from Melbourne, I think we're around 800 kilometres to Melbourne. So we're so close to Melbourne as well. And then up to travelling across to Sydney, we're about 1,300 kilometres. And then going up to Queensland, a little bit further, but, everything's achievable. And along the road, like I said, I've travelled and worked in all those places with my health hat on. And there's some great places to visit on the way if you're travelling. But people may not realise that the road to Tibooburra is now sealed, and lots of caravanners travel up to Tibooburra. And over the years, the road's been really rough. The government have now completely sealed that road. It only opened up last week. And I know that they're talking about, there's a big lobbying going on to seal Warry Gate Road to make sure that the Queensland end is actually sealed as well, just to make sure people are safe, especially in the rains, when the rains come in. And so people travelling up to Tibooburra, very easy to get there. And it's one of my favourite places to visit, and especially in winter. And people may not know this, but in winter, a few of the pubs have their fires outside and you sit outside like an old-fashioned fire. It's just fantastic.
How much impact does the tourism have on Broken Hill, on your economy?
Yeah, no, it's a big impact, and we see it as a major contributor to our economy, and we'd really struggle without it, to be honest. And when COVID hit, one of my first things that I thought of was how are people staying safe, how are people being cared for, our most vulnerable, and then how a business is going to survive. And we've slowly seen our community support local business, especially the food industry. And then as people are starting to move since, I think, the 1st of June in New South Wales, we've seen people starting to come back into town. And it is that, that part that without them, most of these businesses will probably close. We can't generate big money from 17,000 people living in a town. We need to know that our economy is driven by tourism and that we have a lot to offer, but we value the tourists that come to Broken Hill. And that's why Council does so much to make sure that, we have quite a few tourist attractions ourselves. Our art gallery, I would argue that it's for locals as well because it's about, stimulating us all. But we have a geo centre. It's a place where you can understand the mining experience in some ways, in the metallurgy. And then, we have a whole heap of other services that council does, but there's lots of other tourism attractions that people go to. And look, can I just say this? If you come into Broken Hill, go to the Rowo Museum. They have so many things there that it's just incredible. And one of our councillors is one of the volunteers there. And every day she reminds me how great it is. And I went there 4 weeks ago. I do a lot of checking in to see how sites are. And they have this incredible new display. How it ended up at the Rowo Museum, you can ask them. But it was a display that was found in a back shed, and it was from the 1940s and probably was built in the late 1800s. And it's like a little mini show. And so they've got that set on display with the hurdy-gurdy and the knock-'em-down clowns and everything in between. And, it was part of their the palais that was called. So there's always something that people could see. And I could spend a half a day just going to that site. And if you're lucky, you'll have my little counsellor there, Councillor Adams, and she'll probably tell you stories about what's there. It also has the Migrant Museum there. And our migrant story is as colourful as you could imagine. If you could think about, I think the first undertaker was an African American. You had the Cameliers in town. You had the earliest Irish that came to Broken Hill. And you had the migration in the Second World War with our Italian community and what formerly known as the Yugoslav community. So it's I think someone said it was the birthplace of multiculturalism. Certainly is an interesting town to visit and full of colour. It certainly is that.
Well, this is going to be a hard question for you then, Darriea, because my next question is I want you to share a secret or at least one, maybe two, three perhaps, things to do or things to see in Broken Hill that isn't generally known. You're not going to be able to Google it and find it. It's just something that the locals know about that, isn't generally spoken about elsewhere. So a couple of secrets, please.
Yeah, well, there's a couple. One of them is that one of the things I love to do when I've got visitors is there's a golf course out the north past the race course. If you go out there at sunset, you can watch all the kangaroos and all the emus on the greens. And it's so easy to be there. It's near where the racecourse has a caravan park. So you can walk over there from the caravan park, but it's one of the most easiest places to go and enjoy. And I think that's one of the biggest secrets. The other one is Mudawinji. Go up to Mudawinji and make sure you've got a guide taking you on the tour. There is a water hole up there. And so, if there's water in there, you can swim, but there is traditional rock art. And you just can't believe what that's like. Broken Hill has a heritage drive. It's really not on Google search or the Silver Trail, it might be called. So call into the Visitors Information Centre and pick up a free copy of this self-guided tour. It's about 42 kilometres and it'll take you through Broken Hill with all the major sites because there's a mine shaft called Brown's Shaft that overlooks the city. And, it is just so old. You just can't imagine how those miners, worked in those days. So it's probably a few more than you asked for, but they're the top ones that they're the secrets of Broken Hill that you probably don't know about.
Well, there you go, folks. If you haven't been to Broken Hill, you certainly should put it on your bucket list of places to go. And when you get there, spend some good time there. You've been listening today Mayor Darriea Turnley. Darriea, just before we go, I want to mention the fact that you were awarded the New South Wales Local Government Award and Life Membership of the Australian Local Government Women's Association for your contribution to local government. Now, I've got to say, after listening to you today, I'm not at all surprised. You're a fascinating lady with lots of things to say and lots of things to do. Your passion comes over with the type of work you're doing, and we wish you all the best for the future. I suspect Broken Hills can be doing their damnedest to keep you in that role for as long as they possibly can.
Thank you, Roy, and I look forward to greeting any visitors that come to town.
Thanks again, Darriea, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Ciao for now.
Thank you.